More than 1 in 3 people will face cancer in their lifetime. Unfortunately, fear can stop you from getting your cancer screening, but it won't stop cancer. Early detection can save your life. Don't wait for symptoms to appear to act. Cancer screening is safe, effective, and accessible for everyone, including free or low-cost screening programs. Go to cancerscreeninfo.com right now for free screening resources and recommendations from the American Cancer Society. Don't wait. Early detection can save your life. Go to cancerscreeninfo.com today. Cancerscreeninfo.com.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. Here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard, it's basketball day. Men's basketball will be in action tonight against the University of Florida. We will preview that game a little bit later in the show. Got some newcomers on campus. We'll talk about that in our next segment. But big news yesterday, Mississippi State wide receiver Malik Heath elects to enter the NCAA transfer portal. Now, there were some rumblings about this late in the season, that he may go in the portal. And then, it kind of shifted in most of the discussions like, hey, Malik's going to go out there and go pro and try to get some workouts and potentially, work a deal. Probably wouldn't be drafted, but he is pretty good elite athlete. May have an opportunity to make a practice squad somewhere and kind of work his way up. And so there was a lot of discussion that no matter what, that was his last year in Starkville. And then he goes through senior day festivities right before the battle for the Golden Egg, kind of signifying that he was done here. And so as we have discussed on the show before, he was involved in a pretty serious car accident. And not sure that's completely over. He is recovering from all that, but, not exactly sure, what's going to come from all of that. But Malik announced yesterday that he does plan to go in the portal. And so, I really believe that had he not had the car accident, so he would have been able to work out and train and kind of be ready to roll for these pre-draft workouts, that he would have probably gone ahead and gone pro. Mentioned on social media last night that he was at Jackson State. I know many of you are thinking, oh my gosh, he'll leave here and go to Ole Miss. And let's all take a deep breath, okay? Please. But he was at Jackson State. You know what? And I think that's Malik Heath, too. I think about this. Number one, Jackson State, because of what Deion Sanders has done there, is a program that has some shine on it. There are a lot of people looking at it saying, hey, listen, they're playing a pretty good brand of football down here. They played for the HBCU National Championship and came up short, but they played and competed and finished number 2 in the HBCU rankings. And a team that's expected to be even better this year. And so if you're Malik Heath, because there is some buzz around that program, and I think that he would have an opportunity to put up some big numbers there, that might be a good decision for him. But I'm a Malik Heath fan, and listen, let me preface that by saying, listen, there are no perfect people out there, but I do believe Malik Heath is a guy that has a really good heart. He's made some bad decisions. I don't believe he's a bad person by any stretch. I'm pulling for Malik. And hey, if he goes to Jackson State, hope he goes down there and has a big year. It's an All-American. And really sets himself up well for draft positioning and a chance to take care of himself and his family in the future. He has his college degree. He is a Mississippi State alum, so he's one of us. And we thought last week or so there was some talk. Well, maybe he's back. Maybe it'll work out and he's able to come back. But that's not the case. So he's moving on. And everybody says, well, Steve, why? The whys don't matter. They all mean the same thing. Gone is gone. It's just kind of how things work. But he's not leaving because, that he was unhappy, with his role here. He was the guy that tweeted out shortly after his accident to Coach Steve Spurrier, hey, we're looking forward to next year, but things didn't work out, the way maybe that he intended. But, it is what it is, but he's moved on. So that makes 11 transfers from Mississippi State. Now, a lot of casual fans hear that number and think, oh, my gosh. We've been over this on the show before. If you've listened to previous shows, you know that State is actually among the best in the SEC when it comes to player retention. The transfer portal is affecting everybody. It's like we're only kind of acutely aware of what happens in our little maroon bubble. But there's a ton of transfers out there, a ton. Now, sometimes that's best for everybody involved. But I wrote an article last week about the production. Mississippi State is not losing much when it comes to production. Are you losing some potential? Maybe. You lose Aaron Brule, that's significant, for sure. Outside of that, there hadn't been a lot of production until Malik Heath. And let's be honest, as much as I like Malik, he hadn't been the player that I had hoped that he would be. I was hoping that he would be a difference maker. But he has to show some flashes. And again, this is a guy, too, that's got to get healthy and got to grow up a little bit. But, Malik Heath, probably the second most important loss of the season when it comes to the transfer portal. Many of the players have gone in the transfer portal, have really made no significant contribution to Mississippi State sports. And that's not to maybe cast any shade in their direction. The reality of it is that this is the Southeastern Conference. There are a lot of people that show up as developmental players that don't develop, and not just here but elsewhere. You get buried down the depth chart and you start thinking, man, I'm coming out here every day. I'm going through all the same lifts as everybody else. I'm eating the same meals, going to all the same meetings, but yet I'm not getting any payoff by playing. Maybe I'm better off somewhere else, and that's okay too. It's not always something personal. We like to think that it is, but it's not always something personal. And, here's the thing too, is everybody back home is like, man, you need to get in the portal. You need to get in the portal and go somewhere else. You're not going to get an opportunity there. So you've got people kind of preying on them. That's not necessarily that means that they have ill intentions, but I know that, I'll give you a good example. Is Kentrell Bullock is a guy from my hometown. He's at Ole Miss, and there have been some people who are like, hey, listen, he needs to get in the portal. Well, I think that would be a mistake if you're Kentrell Bullock, honestly. Not that I'm an Ole Miss supporter by any stretch of the imagination, but I want all of our guys from Columbia High School to have an opportunity. But if you're Kentrell Bullock, I don't know that you could transfer into a situation better than what's in front of him at Ole Miss. You say, Steve, what are you talking about? They're bringing in Zach Evans. And that's true. But you know what? They lost 3 other running backs. So Kentrell Bullock is a guy that knows the system. He's a guy that knows the culture. He's a guy that knows the roster. And more importantly, the coaches and players know him. Kentrell Bullock is probably going to be the number 2 back behind a former 5-star. So why would he go in the portal? Those are the things I think about. But again, there's some people back home that's like, he needs to get in the portal and do that. I completely disagree. I have no connection with Kentrell. I haven't talked to him, I guess, since he was, a senior at Columbia High School. But if I did, I would encourage him, you need to stay where you are. Because you're going to leave somewhere else. You're going to go to probably a more crowded depth chart. And so those are the things that I think people don't really look at. Sometimes everybody has an opinion, but not everybody has facts. And so I just share that with you because, again, a lot of these young men are under a lot of pressure. They really are. There's no end to the advisors that they have. And many of those people really have their best interest at heart, but just don't fully understand kind of the lay of the land. It's like, hey, we just want to see our guy play. We want to see our guy be happy. And, that should be everybody's focus, is we want to see these young people be successful. But it doesn't always work out that way. And maybe if you can't be successful here or there or somewhere else, you need to make a move. Because, again, you only get a short time in life to play sports. Let's thank our good friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I love Bulldog Burger Company. Might even go get dinner there tonight. May get it to go. May get some Bulldog Burger Company. And as I say that, there are people within earshot here that's like, that sounds like a great idea. Sounds like a great idea. I love Bulldog Burger Company. I loved them before they loved me. Now, they love me a lot now, and I love them. But I loved them before they loved me. Before they were even sponsors of the show, I was a patron at Bulldog Burger Company because I enjoyed my meal at Bulldog Burger Company. I continue to enjoy my meals from Bulldog Burger Company, and you will too. I've had everything on the menu. Absolutely everything on the menu. I would venture to say I've probably been there 60 or more times. Easy. Probably more than that. Because usually what happens, like when some friends come to town and they're like, hey, I'm going to be in town for a meeting, or we got this going on, or I'm dropping the kid off at a camp. I'd like to have lunch with you. Sure, let's meet at Bulldog Burger Company. Okay, fine with me. Let's go. It's kind of become my meeting place. Make it your meeting place too, in more ways than one. 3 great locations to serve you right here on University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, and the brand new one, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. You'll be glad you went by there. Have the spring rolls as the appetizer. I would say I get 3 to 4 messages or tweets or tagged in pictures a week of people having the spring rolls. And then I see like the before and after pictures, and they automatically look better looking. It's incredible. It's science. Have that great restaurant quality hamburger. You'll be glad you did. Get the chocolate shake to go. You can eat a lot of places, but you can't feast a lot of places like you can at Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. All right, before we get into some basketball stuff, and in case you hadn't noticed as of late, I've been a little more excited about basketball, like many of you. It's like I'm kind of planning my evening around the fact that the Bulldogs are playing tonight. Like, hey, I got to be somewhere around the television. I got to get all my stuff done before that ball game comes on. And, in last couple of years, at times I think, oh, yeah, we're playing tonight. No, I get excited about it. I'm excited to see us play this evening. Really excited about it. I think we got a chance to go get a W down there. But so before we get into all of that, let's talk about the newcomers. Not a huge surprise, I guess, in many respects. Many of you, if you have listened to this show and if you subscribe to genespage.com, and if you don't, you certainly should. Like I read with great interest yesterday on social media, some people were like, hey, well, wait a minute. Oh, we got a kicker? Yeah, we did. And if you have listened to this show and you have been... if you have been on the genespage.com message boards, Paul Jones and I have kind of let everybody know, for a while now that, we got some cool things happening. And so Massimo Biscardi from Coastal Carolina makes a move. He is here on campus. He is here ready to roll. Pretty exciting stuff. Now, also, too, as of note, this has just kind of happened here within the last last few minutes, I guess, since we have kind of all been together. But Ben Rabin is a punter that is going to transfer to Mississippi State too. And so there's going to be some. They won't announce all the walk-ons, but they will announce they'll announce the scholarship guys that are coming on, and that's one of the reasons that you see Massimo announced. But pretty good stuff here. Ben makes a move from Northern Colorado Athletics, the Bears up there. Ben is a guy, too, that obviously has competed in the college level, Division I FBS level. So we're eager to get him in. And that's the thing, too. One of the things I give Mike Leach and his staff a lot of credit for. When there is an issue, they will address it. May not address it as quickly as some of our fans want it to be addressed, but they will address it. Ben tweets out earlier, couldn't be more excited to announce I'll be playing my last year of college football at Mississippi State. Thank you to everyone who has helped and supported me along the way. 100% time to get to work. #Hail State. He also has a very interesting mustache there. Very, very interesting mustache. So Ben, again, will come on and compete with Archer Trafford for the starting position at punter. Tucker Day's a guy that's been around here for a while, elected to declare to go pro. Sure, he'll get a chance to get into camp with somebody, and we'll see how things progress. That's the thing with Tucker. Tucker's got a big leg. Consistency was always kind of the issue. So, Ben joining the program, and be a cool thing, too. To kind of see that unit retooled. You guys all understand that. We're all excited about that, as we should be. That was one of those things that, that was a bone of contention all year long for us. All right, so... And there will be some other announcements. Jackie Matthews, not announced yet. And then Justin Robinson from Georgia, not announced yet. That could happen at any time. By the time you listen to this show, it may have already been announced. But as of yesterday, here are the new enrollees that have been announced by Mississippi State University. Defensive back Marcus Banks out of Houston, Texas, the Candy High School, former Alabama player. We expect him to come in and immediately compete for the starting position opposite Emmanuel Forbes at corner. He, DeCarlos Nicholson, and DeCambriana Richardson will all kind of be locked in there. And that's the thing you think about. You generally only play 4 corners over the course of a ball game. You got DeCarlos coming in. You got DeCam coming back. You got Ferge, a guy that's kind of a journeyman that, it's almost like they've tried to run him off and he just won't leave. The guy just keeps showing up and started some games for us. I think he is a solid depth guy. But you have really embraced the fact that you needed to kind of retool this position group. Kind of had, let's just call it what it was, a subpar year recruiting last year at corner. This year's been much better. Marcus Banks, kind of the centerpiece of that group. Kicker Massimo Biscardi, we mentioned him. He did not make a public declaration about his transfer destination until yesterday. And then the university releases that he's committed. I actually reached out to him a couple times on social media to see if we couldn't do an interview, and he never responded. And that happens, especially with transfers. A lot of these guys have been through this process before. They don't really want to do interviews. They don't really want to make any public declarations. A lot of times they don't even want schools to know who all has offered them. Dealt with that a few times lately too. Defensive lineman Janarius Clayton from Tupelo, Mississippi. You may recall he flipped to Mississippi State from Ole Miss back on National Signing Day. Kind of that late visitor coming back from the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. Former Mississippi State commitment. Then it was all this discussion. Is he an O-lineman? Is he a D lineman? State kind of projected him as an offensive lineman. He kind of was like, hey, I really want to play D-line. I'll play offensive line if I have to, but I really feel like I'm better at D-line. So then all of a sudden Phelps and Arnett and those guys are kind of carrying the heavyweight in Mississippi State recruiting efforts. Well, then he flips to Ole Miss. And then late in the process, we started getting some chatter, some back-channel chatter that commitment might not be quite what they think it is. And then he sneaks up here and takes a visit. And the truth of the matter is, we probably should have held the news. And that's the thing, too. Sometimes you got to think about the impact of what you're reporting, what it's going to have on somebody else, especially a 17, 18-year-old young man. Can you imagine the pressure that he and his family were under once it got out that he had snuck up to Mississippi State after going to the All-Star game and took a visit to Mississippi State? Now, Janarius says he just turned his phone off. He didn't have to deal with it. But, may have been better theater if we had held that news and just let everybody find that on National Signing Day. Wide receiver Janarius Hobson, kind of an undervalued recruit in this class. I mean, when I had a chance to see him back in the spring at a 7-on-7 tournament over in Birmingham, I loved him. I thought he was great. I thought he was the best offensive player on the field that day. Not just because of the fact that he was the guy that made plays, but he was the guy that kind of took ownership of the team and ownership of the moment. Like when there was a play that needed to be made, you could just kind of see that look in his eyes. He kind of communicated with his quarterback. Telling me, hey, look for me here. I got the guy. He was outstanding. And it reminds me a lot of Jamion Lewis. And what I mean by that is, Janarius might be a little bit bigger, but he has that same type of, alpha dog type mentality. There's some real toughness with this guy. I really like his game. I like the fact that he's an early enrollment guy. I like the fact that, his dad is a guy that was very involved in his recruitment, but also, too, not a guy that was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. It was kind of like, hey, I'm going to go around and take you on these trips, and we're going to go make some memories together, and then you're going to make a decision, but I'm going to make sure that you get the most informed information possible. And Janarius was leaning to Mississippi State's way even way back in early spring, and now here he is on campus. And I think sometimes, guys that commit early sometimes lose their hype, and people forget how much we wanted him prior to his commitment. They're like, oh, what's he waiting for? Let's get him. Then we get him, and it's kind of like, the conversation changes. We kind of move on and begin to think about other players, because what we have is great, but let's talk about what's next. But I think Hop is a guy, too, that I won't be the least bit surprised if he is not a contributor early in his career. I think about some of the other guys that we have, at that position. You kind of know what you've got coming back. And I think Hop is a guy, too, that knows how to work. And Horn Lake has done a good job producing players as of late. There were years they always had athletes, but they didn't always have prospects. Coach Stephen, they're doing a good job, cultivating and kind of developing these guys. And I think Hop is a guy, too. I think we're going to look back one day and say, remember that guy, that Janarius Hobson guy that, that we signed? And like, oh, yeah, that's the guy that just scored. Offensive lineman Percy Lewis, well documented here. Well documented. This was a wild recruitment. He was committed to Oregon early on. And I think most of us knew that the chances of a guy from McAdams High School going to Oregon were pretty slim. And hey, give it to Joe and those guys for getting him to commit early. But I would say by the time the summer rolled around, the word behind the scenes was he is going to sign with an SEC school. He is a guy that is an SEC guy. He is going to have multiple opportunities to play in the Southeastern Conference. Of course, State Ole Miss, others end up offering him. He elects to stay closer to home. It boiled down to a State Ole Miss battle. It was wild. I mean, it really was. It's one of those kind of like when I write the retirement book and go into hiding like Salman Rushdie, this is one of those that I'll write about. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. And I give Percy a lot of credit. Percy and his family just kind of said, hey, that's what we're going to do. They waited to the end to say it, which is probably the smart thing to do when you're the center of a contentious recruitment. But Ole Miss and Mississippi State both pursued him incredibly hard, made it a very difficult decision. And, what we had heard, I would say maybe 2 months, maybe back late September, early October, was that, he and Carson Williams were just as thick as thieves, and that, he would spend a lot of time talking to Carson, and Carson had a lot of great things to say about Mississippi State, Mason Miller, and about Mike Leach. And so you had a guy here that was kind of part of your inner circle that would shoot you straight. And I think, again, that goes back to kind of roster management the right way. Mississippi State goes out and gets Carson Williams last year. You had to go get an older guy, even if it's just as a depth guy. And he comes in here and he has a good experience. And so rather than him tell Percy Lewis, oh, man, you're better off going somewhere else, he's like, oh, man, you need to come up here and be with us. So here he is. He will be, I would say, he and Nick Jones will compete at left tackle. Percy is the more gifted athlete. And that's not a slight at Nick Jones, but Percy Lewis is a mammoth offensive tackle. So if you remember last year in the spring practice, Jalen Green ran second team, Jameer Calvin ran second team, Mekhi Polk ran second team. Now, despite the fact that we watched them, Randy Charlton was second team. I guess Jameer didn't get here quite then. But all of the transfers last year that took part in spring practice all ran second team. And so when you get the reports from spring practice this year and Percy Lewis, maybe you're running second team, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. Just kind of relax, because Mike Leach isn't going to give anybody a starting spot. And it's disrespectful to the guys that are returning that somebody shows up day one and you hand them a seat at the table. You got to make them earn it. So if you read those reports, like, oh, he must not be as what we thought. As Randy Charlton and those guys were like that too. So you got to give them some time to kind of learn the system, and then we'll see what happens in the fall. And of course, once we got into the fall, Mekhi Polk, Jalen Green, we were running first team. Randy Charlton was kind of back and forth between first and second team, and then Jordan Davis goes down, and then he was first team the rest of the year. So I say that to kind of preface that, because that's what's going to happen, and people are going to forget. I do this for a living. We go watch Mississippi State practice and play when we can. And I remember all that last year, and I thought, this is Mike Leach kind of sending a message to those newcomers. It's like, you got to earn it. We're not going to give you a starting spot. Now, they were getting plenty of reps. Much will be the case with Percy Lewis as well. So, when you read Paul Jones' depth chart after the first couple of spring practices and Percy's running second team, don't go run to Facebook and say, see, I told you, because you're going to be wrong. Quarterback Braden Locke. This was a very, very, very interesting recruitment, too, because he had a ton of options, took a ton of visits, but got it done early. And once he got it done, he was finished. Absolutely finished. This is a guy that wants to play in the air raid. And it was, again, wasn't scared away by the fact that you've got Will Rogers coming back. You got two quarterbacks ahead of you, between you and Will Rogers. So you're kind of coming in from Jump Street as the number 4 guy. But Mike Leach kind of explains that to people. And here's the thing that I've always thought, too. If you're dependent on a freshman quarterback to come in and play, it's not going to be a very good year. It's just not. Old is what wins in college football. There are some rare occasions where a young quarterback will show up, and the reason we remember those names is because they are the exception rather than the rule. But I like Braden Locke, not the biggest guy, has a big arm, very decisive with the football, played in an offense there at Rockwall High School that is very similar to the air raid offense. They run a lot of the same concepts that Mike Leach does. Wide receiver Jordan Mosley for Northwestern. We talked about him recently. Former 4-star out of McGill-Tulane in Mobile, Alabama. Like his game a lot, but he is more of a straight line runner. The thing that I kind of noted in my scouting report is there's not a lot of variety in the route tree. Now, some of that, too, just may be a byproduct of you take what the defense gives you, and when you have the fastest guy on the field, it's like, hey, let's just run the fade. Let's just run the fade. And then the thing that I kind of noticed, too, is they didn't have the jump ball in the red zone with him. They ran the slant a lot. That makes me wonder, can he not elevate? Can the quarterback not throw it? That's the thing you kind of figure out. But when you've got a guy that legitimately runs track level speed around the 4.4s, low 4.4s, Some people suggest he's run sub 4.4. I haven't seen that other than people's reporting that. But when you've got a guy like that, and you've got a guy that, number one, was a former Tennessee commitment too. It's not like, oh, well, he was from the Southeast and nobody wanted him. He was committed to Tennessee until late in the process. And as I mentioned on the show when we broke his kind of recruitment down, I think people forget what a mess it was at Tennessee this time last year. I mean, it was an absolute mess. You remember they opted out of the bowl game and said it was COVID-related. Next thing you know, we found out there's an NCAA investigation. You fire Jeremy Pruitt. There's his coaching search, and it seems like it takes forever to find anybody. And, of course, at the time, they thought that they were going to get Vince Lombardi, and, it didn't work out. Mike Ditka wouldn't come out of retirement. It's just like – and they get Josh Heupel, who I think has done well. But it was a mess at Tennessee, a mess. And so Jordan Mosley elected to go elsewhere, and then late in the process ends up going to Northwestern. Well, now he's back in the Southeastern Conference, which is where he wanted to be in the first place. And so, again, I'm okay going young in the portal, especially when you've got a guy that's got that kind of size and speed. Defensive back to Carlos Nicholson. Again, this is one, too, because we won and we've moved on, we kind of forget what a big deal it was. DeCarlos Nicholson committed to Mississippi State first. And then he got Florida State, and then he got Kentucky, and then there's all these other people that jumped in the mix with him. And I'll be honest with you, shortly after he decommitted, I was like, we're not getting this guy back. It's not going to work out. It's not. Well, he's not coming back. Well, then he committed to Kentucky. And I'll be honest with you, when he committed to Kentucky, I was like, okay, we got a shot. If he had committed to Ole Miss, because in a lot of prospects, Mine State and Ole Miss are really very similar. It's two schools within the home state. The distance from home is relatively the same. I would have been more worried. Not to mention there's some folks down there around Petal, I'm sure, that are the Ole Miss persuasion that would have only aided in the cause. And I don't necessarily mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying that there would have been an amount of local pressure. It's like, oh, we're so glad that you're part of our program, blah, blah, blah. You think anybody down at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College or in Petal, Mississippi was stumping for Kentucky? Of course not. There was nobody out there saying, hey, man, really excited about you going to Lexington and being a Wildcat. It's just not going to happen. But you get involved with the in-state schools, it's completely different. The in-state people are like, hey, man, excited you're a Bulldog, excited you're a Rebel. And so DeCarlos, and I give Darcel McBath a lot of credit, and Darcel took a whipping last year on the message boards and social media. Darcel McBath's a great coach. Now, the recruiting efforts last year, the recruiting results were beneath what we needed them to be. But this year, much more in line with our expectations, and in many respects exceeded our expectations. He never gave up on DeCarlos Nicholson and then gets him back, flips him from Kentucky on National Signing Day, and then prevented him from visiting Ole Miss. People forget that too. It's like everybody remembers the kid that's committed to Mississippi State. They talk about, like Jaheim Otis. Stephen him said he was going to be visiting Mississippi State, and then he surprised everybody, and he goes to Ole Miss, ha, 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 and then he signs with Alabama. Womp, womp, womp. They forget about the fact that DeCarlos Nicholson was highly coveted by Ole Miss. They're trying to get him on campus, and then Mississippi State shuts it down. Why don't we talk about that more? Or we can talk about Ole Miss wanted Percy Lewis to come the final weekend. Mississippi State wanted Percy Lewis to come the final weekend. And what does he do? He visits Mississippi State the final weekend, reschedules his Ole Miss visit for the weekend before. And he was basically told, hey, if you're going to visit them, you need to go visit them before you visit us. And then he does. And so, again, we get so caught up in the losses sometimes we forget about the wins. So Mississippi State kind of dominated that aspect of it down the stretch. And then not to mention there were so many Ole Miss people out there trying very, very hard to get some guys to come up and visit them after the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. And lo and behold, the one guy that does go out and take a visit after the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game among the state Ole Miss prospects was Janarius Clayton that went to Mississippi State. So why aren't we talking about that? It's like we get so caught up in, the staff does this and the staff doesn't do that. How about how they kind of orchestrated the official visit process late in the month of December, prior to signing day? They got what they wanted. Do they get everybody? No, they don't. But when it came to this whole thing with State and Ole Miss, they kind of pushed Ole Miss around a little bit. But we don't talk about that enough. It's like, there's this, and they took M.J. Daniels from us, and yeah, they did. It shouldn't have been a big surprise. We talked about it on the show, talked about it on Gene's page, that it was very much a possibility. And then they sort of get blindsided by Janarius Clay, and they can, say, well, we're not so, sure about him. Whatever. That university, the whole thing is built on public relations and about headlines, things like that. And so Mississippi State really took the fight to Ole Miss late in the process. And if I'm not mistaken, went head-to-head on, 8 prospects in the month of December and got them all? I think that's correct. I mean, I remember we had the talking points together right after signing day. But, State got it done. Simple as that. State got it done. And so, again, we'll have a couple more announcements here in the days ahead. And, I guess, when you look at the numbers here, we talk about having, 11 guys transfer out. And then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 2. You're going to have 10, 11 guys, scholarship-wise, join the team this year. So, in many ways, there's a little bit of a trade there, too. You got 11 guys that aren't going to be part of spring practice, and you've got 11 guys plus some walk-ons that will be. So, again, it's good roster management. And, again, I'm always a proponent of the early enrollment guy because he gets an opportunity to number one, acclimate to college life before you have to jump into the season. You know what I'm saying? You know how it was when you first went to college. I mean, you don't even know where Walmart is, right? I mean, it's like you move to a new town, and it's like all of a sudden I got to take college-level classes. How difficult is that going to be? Where do I park my car? Where's the party? You go through all that, so you have the benefit of the spring to do that. And then what do you have, 15 practices in the spring where you have 30 in fall? So it's like you get through this part of it to kind of warm up and get settled, kind of learn the lay of the land, kind of begin to understand, the challenging level of college sports and also college courses. Then you get the benefit of summer where there's not as much, activity on campus. But by the time that you get ready to begin the season, you got 6, 7 months of college life under your belt. So the learning curve as you get into fall camp is so much better than it would be if you just showed up, in July. You get a chance to kind of develop and mature and give yourself a chance to acclimate to new surroundings. You're in transition. It's such a major, major transition in life. For many of us, leaving home was a big deal. And you can say, well, that's the case for everybody. Well, not really. A lot of people that, a lot of kids out there in many respects have kind of raised themselves as high school teenagers. And so they're used to kind of getting themselves up and driving themselves to class and driving themselves to activities. So all of that is kind of taken care of. And so they've already begun to kind of get out of the nest a little bit. But there are some others that maybe didn't have a vehicle and maybe were dependent on other people and maybe had somebody to get them up and feed them breakfast every day. And now all of a sudden, you've got to learn to be a little more independent of yourself. And so that is a difficult transition for many people. And so you got to give yourself a chance to transition. And I think being the early enrollment student really gives you a chance to do that before the demands of college football season are really, really realized. All right, let's thank our good friend Blair Chandler. Blair is my friend, your friend, and it pays to have a friend in the industry. There are a lot of people that have friends that'll do a lot for them, but I always love the fact that I know some people when I need to get something done, something that I can't do myself, that I've got friends I can call on. And Blair Chandler is one of those folks. If you are looking to refinance your mortgage or perhaps get a new mortgage, maybe perhaps you're looking to buy a home for the first time, maybe you're relocating, maybe you need a second mortgage, get that HELOC, get some things working for you. I think Blair's the guy to work with. I like doing business with Bulldogs, and Blair does too. Blair has shared with me, if you are a listener of this show, no matter your college allegiance, you mentioned to him, hey, Blair, I heard about you on the Boneyard. He's going to pay for your appraisal. There's so many fees associated, with getting a mortgage closed. Anytime that you can save a few bucks, that's a good thing. And again, it just shows you how Blair wants your business. Here's the deal. 21 years of experience in the industry, in a top 1% close ratio in the country, works for Fairway Mortgage, recently voted number 1 in customer satisfaction and mortgage lending. So not only do you have a great guy working for a great company, doing a great job, the guy's giving you a great incentive to do business with him. Again, mention to him about the Boneyard, and you get your appraisal for free. Let me give you his personal cell number. 601-500-2344. Again, that's 601-500-2344. And if for somehow you missed the number and maybe you're too lazy to go back and look it up, just message me. I'll send it to you. I got Blair in my phone. Just message me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And many of you have. And so, and Blair's told me, hey, he's got some loans in the pipeline from Boneyard listeners. So thank you for that. And again, thank you, Blair, for sponsoring the top 10 list. And again, check him out on the World Wide Web at closewithblair.com. That's CLOSE with Blair, BLAIR.com. Today's top 10 list, I probably could have put a great list together myself, but I involved my sons in the voting process. We're doing Post Malone today. That's right, we're doing Post Malone. Audrey's good friend Chandler, who was from Brookhaven, Mississippi, and been a great supporter of mine. I've met him and his dad, and he's been a great friend to my daughter. Like if we've ever needed to move anything. Matter of fact, there have been a couple times when book shipments have arrived in Starkville, my publisher's been able to hire Chandler to come help offload trucks. Yeah, it's outstanding. He's just a good dude. And so he mentioned to Audrey, hey, we need a Post Malone top 10. And so I reached out. I'm a big Post Malone fan, but I wanted to, hey, I don't want to miss anything here. I don't want to miss any deep tracks. So we got a pretty good top 10 list together. I like Post Malone. I think most people do. Some people don't. They're haters of everybody. Now, some of these songs on here are going to be big hits. Some of them are going to be deeper tracks. And maybe your favorite didn't make the list. But you can make your own list, have your own show. It wouldn't be as good as this one, but you can do it. I won't stand in your way. But here are some honorable mentions that didn't make the list. Now, some of these, I'll be honest with you, I really like, and they're probably top 10 worthy. Some of the language is probably maybe not top 10 worthy. And that's not that I'm some Pollyanna or anything like that. I'm not sitting here clutching my pearls when I hear those songs. But same Bees, you know the song I'm talking about? Same Bees, got G-Eazy on it too, and I think G-Eazy's verse is the best. That's an honorable mention. It's Over Now, which is probably one you don't need to listen to with your kids in the car. Blame It On Me, that's another great one. Almost made the list. And then Myself off of Hollywood is Bleeding. Stoney is a great album. Beer Bongs and Bentleys is great. I also want to throw an honorable mention to Motley Crue. There's a track that he does called Motley Crue, C-R-E-W. That's a single that was released back in 2021. It's a little different. Got a cool vibe to it. But here's a top 10. And I made a big mistake. I had Blair Chandler on the mind. It's not. Audrey's friend's name is Colton, not Chandler. So I apologize, Colton. I apologize. I had Blair's phone number pulled up in front of me, and I mentioned Chandler because I'm old and decrepit. I'm from the 1900s. You have to forgive me. But it's Colton, our friend Colton from Brookhaven. We love him to death. He's a great friend of our family. So this is for you, Colton. And this isn't just my list. I did get Ani and Ian to both weigh in. And I think we all agree. There was one song that we did disagree on. Too Young. That's one that didn't make my list that Ani was adamant should be a top 5 Post Malone song. I didn't include it. Ian agreed with me. It's a 2-1 vote. We did not include it. So number 10, not a single, but a great track. It's off Beer Bongs and Bentleys. It's 92 Explorer. And if you remember, for those of you that are a little bit young, we used to have the Spreewell rims. Like when you stop and then your rims kept spinning. Like that was like all the rave for a while. And then eventually they kind of broke down. Some people still use them, but they're not as popular as they once were. But there was a craze. And so Post talks about that. You know, my whip stops, my wheels keep spinning. 92 Explorer. Number 9, we actually played a song at Duty Noble Field. I dig it. I think most people do. It probably didn't chart as high as I think it should have. But it was a song that was very popular even on Top 40 radio, and that's Sunflower. Sunflower, number 9 on the list. Number 8, and this may be a little bit undervalued on the list, but there have been so many hits for Post Malone. I felt like that maybe I was taking too many personal liberties with this one. But off of Hollywood is Bleeding, featuring the great one, the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne. It's Take What You Want. Take What You Want. I love Ozzy's voice on this one. And listen, I get that there's like technology and that kind of stuff that can enhance stuff. But I remember when I read an interview right after they recorded this, they said Ozzy absolutely killed it. They had sent the song to Ozzy, then Ozzy recorded his part and they sent it back and they were all excited. And I was thinking, how is this going to work? You know, Ozzy on a rap song. It's genius. And it's not even a real rap song. It is, and that's the thing about Post Malone I like, a lot more versatility with him, unlike some other people in the industry these days. Number 7, a shout out to one of the iconic Mississippi State football players, Dak Prescott, on this song. It's the song "Wow," and yes, Post Malone's a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, and says, "Hey, we're never punt, always going for it. Hail Mary, Prescott touchdown." I think that's exactly how that goes. But anyway, shout out to Dak Prescott. The song is "Wow." I love the bass on this one too. It sounds great in the car. Number 7, "Wow" on the list. Number 6, a song that probably is higher on my list than it would be on most lists. I love this song, and I think it's one of those songs that's probably a little bit undervalued. The track itself is really unlike anything else in the catalog, and I think post-delivery is really good too. It's Other Side. Other Side, number 6 on the list. Number 5, this is one that Ian really fought for and thought should be top 3. I disagreed. I'm the dad. I make the call. But Circles. Circles is another great track, and again, one that got some radio airplay, and a lot of people absolutely dig this one too. I think now that we're at the Final Four, I think most people would agree these are the top 4 Post Malone songs. We may disagree about the order, but I think most people would agree these are the biggest hits in the Post Malone catalog. You may disagree, but I think that the general populace would disagree with you. Number 4, a song that was everywhere about 2 years ago. Everywhere. And I said before, there should be a rock version of this. Somebody should go out there and play this live and rock it up and put more of an edge on it, but it's better now. And I think at some point we've all felt that way. You only say that because I'm not around. You say that you're better now, but it's only because you can't say it to my face. You just kind of say it to your friends and your family, but we both know. We both know you're not better now. And I'm not either. Again, it's kind of the dying pangs of a relationship. Number 3, former walkout song from national championship first baseman Luke Hancock is "Congratulations." I think this was the first Post Malone song that I heard regularly. I was a little bit later on the bandwagon, unlike some of you. But "Congratulations," cool track. I kind of identify with that song. I think it's grand. Number 2, another one off Beer Bongs and Bentleys, if I'm not mistaken. It's Rockstar. And again, this is one that's, there's some drug references in this song too, so you need to be mindful of that too. Not that I think that your kids are a bunch of sheep, but probably don't want to listen to this when your young kid's in the car. But Rockstar is a great track and was the first single off that album. But number 1, and it's the one that started it all, and I actually recently watched an interview with Post when he actually dropped this song on SoundCloud. He was an unsigned artist at the time. And he drops this with a picture of Allen Iverson, and it's the song White Iverson. Number 1 on the list, White Iverson. And he said there were so many people that said, "Hey, don't drop this track, it's not you." But his heart was in it, and he said, "You know what, I love it." And then he goes to bed, and he wakes up, and it's got all these downloads, and all of a sudden, all this social media stuff is filling up. And it really was the breakthrough song for him. And even now, I think it holds up. I think it's grand. I really do. And I think most people today will listen to that and say, you know what? He has evolved a lot as an artist since then, but this is when he truly shared who he really was. I think it's great. A lot of good imagery in the song, but and not to mention, too, Post Malone's not even a basketball player. Kind of interesting how that all kind of unfolds. He was on, I guess it was Ridiculousness, and they asked him about that and said, "Hey, can you hoop?" And he goes, "Oh, man, not at all." So there you go. There's your top 10 list, brought to you by your good friend Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. All right, time to preview the Florida Gators men's basketball game tonight. This segment of the show brought to you by campusbookmart.net. Standing man, Miss Kathy Brown, the lovely, talented Susie, they will treat you like family because in their minds, you are family. It's as simple as that. I love doing business with them. I did business with them before they sponsored the show. But I tell you this, I have learned if I need something, they have it. If they don't, they can get it. Those are the things that I love about doing business locally. You live in some big town and you go, "Oh, we're sorry, we don't stock that." Miss Kathy Brown is one of the best buyers in the industry when it comes to Mississippi State merchandise. She will keep that store fully stocked with great and new Mississippi State merch. You be sure to check them out. If you can't make it to town, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. You know what it is. It's BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. and that'll get you free shipping on all orders over $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. And you know what? College baseball season is going to be here soon, and you're going to be wanting to wear that M/S wherever you go. Be sure and get something fresh. Don't just, save the older stuff for later in the year, but opening day, you need to have some new Mississippi State merch. Take care of that today at campusbookmart.net. Let's talk men's basketball. Bulldogs will play Florida tonight. This Florida team, I always kind of struggle with this. How is Florida ever not great in everything? I mean, honestly, how does that happen? With their resources, their recruiting footprint, how does Florida never contend in everything? I mean, it just, and again, I'm not being critical of anybody. It just seems to me that with their resources, Florida should always be contending. They're not in men's basketball. And really, to be honest with you, I would venture to say that this year has already been a bit of a disappointment. Now, there's plenty of basketball left to be played, but the Gators now 10-6 and 1-3 in the SEC. Still early, but 10-6, not a great record. 1-3, certainly not great within our conference. So, looking back at how it all started for those guys, they pick up a win over Elon early on. They beat number 20 Florida State in the O'Connell Center pretty well, too, 71-55. And the O-Dome has been a place that's been a little difficult to play at times. It was that night for the Seminoles. They take care of Milwaukee in grand fashion, 81-45. They beat Cal, beat Ohio State. So you got some Power 5 comp. Not that they're great basketball schools, but pretty good for the non-conference. And so they open up a 6-0 start with their game against Troy, 84-45, and you feel like, okay, maybe Florida is back. And then what do? They go to Norman, Oklahoma, and get beat 74-67. You think, well, Steve, it's a road game in a Power 5 conference. I get it. Well, then the very next ball game, December 6th, they lose by 15 at home to Texas Southern. That's right, Texas Southern goes into Gainesville and beats the Gators pretty soundly. They bounce back after 2 losses and take care of North Florida 85-55. They go to Brooklyn to play in the Basketball Hall of Fame Invitational, lose to Maryland by 2, so that's 3 of 4 losses. In the Orange Bowl Classic, they take care of South Florida 66-55. Then they beat Stony Brook 87-62. Get into SEC play. The opener against Ole Miss and Oxford was postponed, and then they lose 83-70 to Alabama, the team that Mississippi State just defeated on Saturday. They lose at Auburn 85-73. Both of those games double-digit losses. And then last Wednesday in Gainesville, the LSU Tigers with Will Wade, the American gangster, goes into Gainesville, and the Tigers win 64-58. So 3 consecutive losses to open SEC play. And then over the weekend, the Gators finally pick up their first SEC win. What a 71-63 W over South Carolina. So again, you look at this and say, hey, they've been pretty good, but they're not what we would expect. Just 6-3 at home. Not sure people expected that. 6-3 in the O'Connell Center. So let's look inside the numbers here. Look at who you should be familiar with. And again, this game tips tonight, 5:30 Starkville time. So right when you're getting off work, you can turn to the pregame show. Florida Gators averaging 72.5 points a game, allowing 63.4. I don't know that we win a game in the 70s. We probably need to keep this game in the 60s, but we'll see. State offensively has been a little bit better as of late. Gators shooting 43%, 43.1%, and allowing 43.2. So it's pretty even in that respect, what you would expect from a team that is kind of middle of the road. 3-point percentage, they're shooting 30.6%, allowing 30.5. And so they will shoot it some from the perimeter. In fact, they've attempted 396 shots from beyond the arc. Opponents have shot 80 of 262. So again, the numbers are comparable from a percentage standpoint, but Florida jacking up a lot from beyond the arc. We're going to have to get out there and cover. We did a pretty good job against Alabama at times. Of course, late they made some shots, but they're making 7.6 threes per ball game. Free throw percentage, that's been a real challenge for them. They're shooting less than 70%, 69%. Their opponents And even though there is no defense for free throws, 65.8%. So if we can get up there and make some free throws, we got a chance to probably shorten this game a little bit and kind of stay in there, take those points when we get them. They're averaging 36.7 boards a game, allowing 34.3, so a plus 2.4 in the rebounding margin for them. And again, that's not really significant. And for a team that doesn't shoot it exceptionally well, you would expect them to probably rebound a little bit better. 13.2 assists a game and allowing 10.3. Turnovers, a bit of a problem for them. 13.6 turnovers per game. Their opponents have turned it over 16.3% of the time. SEC play a little bit different. So 2.7 differential in favor of Florida in the turnovers. Points off turnovers, they will capitalize. They're athletic, 19.9 points per game off turnovers while allowing just over 13. 151 steals on the season. That works out to just 9.4 per game, and then allowing 129, which is 8 per game. So a bit of a differential there, again, kind of favoring the Gators. They have blocked a lot of shots, though. 98, that's just over 6.1 per game. They've allowed 58, 3.6 per game. So really exerting themselves there in post defense. Had some bigger crowds out there this year. I don't know what we'll see this evening. But again, this is a game I think Mississippi State can win. Will we win it? I don't know. Florida's actually favored, and that kind of stands to reason. You know, when you play in this league, you go on the road, it's pretty rare that you're favored in an opponent's arena. But again, I think State can win this game. I think State's playing with a lot more confidence right now. Number 12, Colin Castleton. He's the guy that kind of stirs the drink for them. 247 total points. Leads the team 15.4 points per game. He has started all 16 games. Playing a good bit, too. A forward out of DeLand, Florida. Attended Father Lopez Catholic. 6'11" forward. This is where we need Tolu Smith and Garrison Brooks to really play well. Can't allow him to kind of set up camp down there and give us trouble. Leads the team with 145 rebounds. Nearly averaging a double-double. 9.1 boards per ball game. Also handed out 28 assists and has 13 steals. And leads the team with 44 blocks. That 41 turnovers, though, that's a big number, too. That's second on the team. Pretty big number there. Flanders Fleming Jr., averaging 10.9 points per game, the only other double-digit scorer on this team. They really kind of do it by committee. Flanders Fleming Jr., 16 games played, just 6 starts, is a 6'5", 205 grad student guard. A guy that they're expecting some big things from, to say the least. You don't go out and sign those guys if you don't. But he has attempted 52 three-pointers on the year, hitting about 36.5%. The one guy that's going to jack it up more times than not, Myron Jones, 96 three-point attempts, which is the most on the Gators team, shooting just over 30%, averaging 9.7 points a ball game, pulling down 3.5 rebounds. Tyree Appleby started 12 games of the 16, averaging 9.1 points per game. Not much of a threat on the rebounding side, pulling down just 2 boards a game. It really looks like Castleton is kind of the guy, you know, and that kind of goes without saying. But they just don't seem to have a very strong supporting cast around him. But, you know, looking through these numbers, and when you look at it, you say, okay, on paper, this doesn't look like a great team. Anytime that you have recruited at the level Florida has the last several years, and you're playing in their arena, you're going to have to bring your best effort. And so do I expect Mississippi State to win? I don't really know, but I do think this is a winnable game for us. And I think if we can defend in the post and we can deny Castleton the basketball, we make somebody else beat us, then we've got a real chance to win this game. One of the things you got to watch against Florida, too, is the inside-out game. You know, you begin to double in the post, and all of a sudden he dishes out to a wide-open shooter out there beyond the arc in the half-court set. Next thing you know, you're in some trouble. So we'll see how things really kind of progress. I'm eager to see the game, like many of you. And, again, I think that is a testament to Ben Howland. And spoke to somebody yesterday very, very, very close to the Mississippi State Athletic Department. We talked about how significant the win over Alabama was. It's like, you know what, not just is it big for our fan base and big for our program, it's big for Ben. I mean, it really, really is. Because how many times in the past, if we win a game or two, people begin to believe, and then we have a chance at a quad one win, and then we blow it. And that didn't happen. We finished the deal. And, again, congratulations to those guys. Now let's kind of keep it going. And Mississippi State, of course, will host Ole Miss this weekend That's a big game too, but this is a huge game too because it is the next game. But it's also a game you look at and say, hey, they have really struggled in SEC play. We need to kind of get them while they're down before they kind of figure some things out. And so, as well as I do, we will get their best shot. The fact that we have won a couple in a row too, they're going to be up to play us. It's not going to be a situation where we're going to sneak up on those guys. They're going to be very, very aware of what Mississippi State can and can't do. This is where I think Tolu Smith can make a big difference. Tolu, of course, conditioning not quite there this past weekend. Got in some foul trouble as well. We need him to stay in this ball game. We need him to stay out of foul trouble. We need him to be able to get in there and really compete, with Castleton and kind of make somebody else carry the freight for them. This Florida team obviously is a team that's got some talent, even though their record may not truly reflect their potential. But they're a team, too, that I think are somewhat vulnerable right now, too. I like the matchup for us. I really do. I like the matchup because I do think that we do play strong post defense. And if we can make some baskets, down there ourselves and maybe get him in a little foul trouble. How about that? He is a guy, too, that has done a pretty good job playing without fouling. Just 33 fouls on the season. That works out to just over 2 per game. So that's a chore for the Bulldog post players too, is, what do you do with a guy that actually can play effective defense without getting too physical? Is it a chance for us to really go down there and bring the fight to him? We'll see. I'm excited to see. I think that's what's going to determine this ball game is how well we can defend Castleton, but also how we attack him when we're on offense. And maybe in some half-court sets, maybe you get him help side there and get him being a little bit over-aggressive and doing a little too much. Maybe you can make some plays there. But again, a nice challenge for the Bulldogs, and it's the next test, which makes it the most important test. And like we talked about on Monday, we've made this a bigger game because we've won some ball games. Let's take a quick look at the SEC basketball standings. Not a lot has changed, but there were some games, last night. Let's see here. That's one thing I always pull these things up, and sometimes you get the wrong link, and next thing you know, you're down something don't want to be. Looking at the standings here, Auburn, of course, still undefeated. A&M, Kentucky, Mississippi State right there, 4th in the SEC, just ahead of LSU, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Missouri, all those teams. Alabama on down with losing records. Florida 1-3, South Carolina 1-4, Ole Miss now 1-4, and Georgia 0-4. Ole Miss loses the ball game last night. I believe Missouri was without their one of their leading scorers, and they still managed a way to win the ball game. And so those things are awfully important too. When you get those matchups, you just cannot afford to let those games get away. Ole Miss now 9-8 overall. A lot of people upset about Kermit Davis up there. A lot of people. Also, this programming note: since this game, since this show began, Mississippi State and the SEC released a statement. There has been an adjustment to the Mississippi State schedule against Missouri. We had to postpone a game back on January 5th. That game will be played basically a bit of a home-and-home type arrangement. Mississippi State will now play Friday, February 18th at Humphrey Coliseum, and then the Mississippi State game from January 5th is going to go to the 20th. That's Sunday. So we're going to be very, very active there for that week. We're going to have to squeeze that game in. It's going to be the same for everybody, but you really want to get those 2 games in against Missouri because those should be 2 winnable games. And again, this is a team that's 8-9 overall and 2-3 in the conference. So you want to get those in. While they may not make a big dent in the net, make a big impact in that respect, as we continue to kind of climb the SEC ladder, those are 2 wins we need to be able to get. There's no doubt about it. Real quickly here, too, looking at the SEC schedule, just because we're starting to pay closer attention to that sort of stuff, right? Now all of a sudden you start doing a little scoreboard watching. It's always about what we've got going on, but it's going to be a busy night in the SEC. Mississippi State at Florida. LSU is at Alabama. And LSU has taken some really good teams into Coleman Coliseum and come home with a loss. Kentucky at A&M. That's going to be rather interesting. A&M's a team that's ahead of us in the standings at 4-0 in the SEC. And then Georgia is at Auburn. I think we can go ahead and pencil in a loss there for Tom Crane's Bulldogs as they take on a team that Many consider the best in college basketball. Last night, Arkansas takes down South Carolina 75-59 and Missouri 78-53 winners in Oxford. And then Tennessee 68-60 winners over Vanderbilt. So, again, it's fun to be able to play meaningful basketball this time of year. I will say that win or lose tonight, my enthusiasm about men's basketball this season is not going to be impacted. Now, I don't want to go out there and get blown out by any stretch of the imagination. But if State can go in there and win that ball game, and we certainly are capable of doing that, that would go a long way towards helping us build an NCAA tournament resume. And now, Mississippi State now listed by Joe Lunardi as last four in. So we're beginning to kind of get some respect, but we've got to keep momentum going, and that means being able to go into places like Florida, a team that's losing record in the SEC, and be able to win a ball game. And then, of course, with a struggling Ole Miss team coming in this weekend, that is an absolute must-win for us. Absolute must-win for us. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by Portico. Our friend Brooks Bryan, he's my friend, your friend, a friend of Starkville, a friend of Mississippi State baseball. How about that? I believe in doing business with Bulldogs whenever I can. Brooks is kind of the same persuasion, too. He wants to make Starkville a better place. Part of a great group of folks. They're in the process of finishing up this great residential development here in Starkville. Very easy to find. You turn off of 82 on the 12, the very first right. Pat Station Road takes you to Portico. 1.1 miles from the Mississippi State campus, within a stone's throw of the Walmart neighborhood market. Conveniently located for you right there. So if you're on your way home and you forget to pick up something, boom, there it is. You don't have to go all the way across town to get it done. Just jump in there and get it handled. Brooks is a guy, too, that really committed to Mississippi State baseball. And we've talked before about there are a lot of our listeners that have bought homes there. They said, hey, you know what? Eventually we're going to retire to Starkville, so we're going to go ahead and make the plans now. Now it's kind of a secondary home for us. It's a vacation home. It's a ball game, weekend retreat type place. It's an investment property for us. But eventually, when we retire, we're going to move into our home up there. Or maybe you're just thinking, you know what, maybe now is the time. I've always wanted to live in Starkville or move back to Starkville. What better place than to go to Portico? Phase 1 completely sold out. Phase 2, the roads are done, getting all that stuff finished up, getting ready to begin throwing those homes up. You can have some say in what your new home looks like. You can pick out your lot, have a say in your house plans. Brooks and those guys, pretty open to a lot of suggestions with all that stuff too. So maybe get it built the way you want it. You want some more information? I know you do. Give Brooks a call at 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. Told you guys before. I moved to Starkville. I moved out in the sticks after living all those years in Baton Rouge. I wanted to have some privacy and have some land and be on some water and things like that. I got all that. But if I was moving to Starkville now, having had this experience, I would move to Portico because I'd want to be closer to campus. I'd want to be close to campus. And again, you're on the right side of campus, you're on the quiet side of campus, but you're close enough for convenience, but far enough away to have a little privacy. Again, go check it out today. Portico. Make Portico your next move. All right, let's talk a little college baseball. And Division I baseball, D1 baseball. You remember D1 baseball used to just be kind of a hub for scores. I guess they set up like an RSS feed or whatever, and they just had scores. You'd go to their website and you'd just have a scoreboard, and all of a sudden a few years ago they get some investors. They hire Kendall Rogers. They hire Aaron Fitt. They've recently hired Mike Rooney. Kyle Peterson's involved with that group. I respect D1Baseball.com to the point that I'm a subscriber to D1Baseball.com. A lot of people out there providing college baseball content. I love these guys because when I'm on the road, they're on the road. I go all over the Southeastern Conference. I run into these guys. I go to Fort Worth, Texas to go watch the Bulldogs play. They're there. They get out and go see teams play, and so I use their rankings throughout the year. Other people use the coaches poll or they use Baseball America, and no disrespect to Teddy Cahill and Joe and those guys. Love those guys too. I have just had more interaction with D1 Baseball. I know some of you all think that Kendall Rogers is a homer for certain schools, and I can just tell you, based on my experiences with him, that's just not the case. And in fact, down the stretch of all the college baseball experts, when we got to Omaha, Kendall Rogers was the one that picked Mississippi State to win it. How about that? And then down the stretch, I had to remind him. I was like, hey, you're the only one. He goes, was I? Yeah, you're the only one that picked Mississippi State. And so going into that final game, Mississippi State ready to go. Mississippi State wins it. Now, Aaron Fitz says Kendall Rogers flips and flops a lot. He kind of jumps on the fastest horse. But I just respect the job those guys do, and we've broken down some other top 25 polls. I've been waiting for this one because I felt that it would be the most fair, not just to Mississippi State, but to everybody. There are a lot of teams out there that, so much guesswork in putting these polls together. But there's some things, there's some teams that are ranked like in some people's top 10, and you're like, does this guy know that this guy didn't come back? Do they not know this and that? I feel like this is a really good poll. This is probably more in line with how I would rank the top 25. Of the top 25 polls that have been released, this one matches my opinion probably better than any other. So let's go with this. Number 25, Miami. Miami had got hot at times last year. Never really could get over the hump. They ended the year unranked. They're 25 in the D1 baseball poll. Mississippi State's first opponent, number 24, Long Beach State, finished the year 28-15 and also unranked. But you're beginning to see some late top 25 buzz for this Long Beach State team. The 49ers, but they're dirtbags. Those guys are going to come in here. They're going to be ready to play. They're a veteran team. We expect to win the weekend, but if we could somehow get a sweep over these guys, over a top 25 team to open the season, it would be a very, very strong statement for the defending national champions. It's like, we could have scheduled anybody, but we've got a top 25 opponent coming to town, and it just kind of worked out well for us because you remember we went out there in 2020, and they were set to come back in 2021 because of all the COVID regulations. They didn't, but we get them here this year, and so it works out too. We're actually going to get a better team and a better test. Duke, number 23. I like this Duke program. I don't think they're a team that really contends in the ACC. I do think they're a team that wins in the ACC. You remember a couple of years ago, you probably your Duke postseason memory is when Duke absolutely just destroyed Vanderbilt. I mean, absolutely beat Vanderbilt to death. And Vanderbilt, on the brink of elimination, trots Kumar Rocker out there, and he throws a no-hitter. And at that point, Kumar was kind of an unproven college commodity. We knew who he was. We knew that he had a bright future. We knew he was Tracy Rocker's son, but he wasn't Kumar yet. And then he throws a no-hitter, forces a Game 3, Vanderbilt wins. It's crazy. But Duke is a team that is kind of quietly a super regional contender more years than not. They don't always get there, but they're a team that they're a difficult out in regionals. And I do think they're a team that will probably be similarly situated this year. Number 22, Dallas Baptist. People kind of slept on them a little bit last year. They finished the year 41-18 and ranked 14th, nearly got to Omaha. There are some people in college baseball media circles that believe Dallas Baptist is kind of an Omaha team in waiting, but it's just a matter of time before they make it. They've done a great job kind of building pitching staffs over there, and it wasn't just Wes Johnson. They've built a nice culture there. Dallas Baptist ranked 22 in the poll. I think they're a team to watch. They're going to be a dangerous team because they're going to have pitching. But I think they're also a team, too, that defensively is going to be one of the better teams in their league. They'll certainly win the league. They're going to be in somebody's regional. Don't know if they're a 1. I don't think they host, but they're probably a 2 somewhere. I don't know that I want them as a 2. I would want them coming here. I'd love them to go to Oxford as a 2. They're a team that obviously elevates their game in the postseason. They think that they've kind of got that chip on their shoulder. They're not getting any respect. They're always kind of battling for that. And I think once they break through, they'll probably lose their coaching staff. But I think Dallas Baptist is, again, kind of one of those quiet baseball programs. They're a little bit like Cal State Fullerton without the resume. You know what I'm saying? And at some point, Cal State Fullerton was that team too. But Dallas Baptist is a team that has kind of carved out a nice little niche and is beginning to win some recruiting battles that I think are going to get them over the hump. Georgia Tech, 21, finished the year 31-25. I'm not a big Georgia Tech fan. For some reason, they get a lot of preseason hype, but I think 21 is probably accurate. Probably. And a thing that I think about, too, is, Georgia Tech, I mean, you're right there in Atlanta. I mean, we play the Wood and Bat Championships just down the road there. An incredible baseball state, the state of Georgia. I met Chris McCraney, I guess, recently from Team Georgia, travel team out of there. They always have players in the state of Georgia. And you think, okay, well, it's been enough to sustain Georgia Tech as a top 25 team. Is this the year that they take a step forward? I'm going to say no. but I think they're a team, obviously, that is a solid regional team. Number 20, the Anteaters come in there. UC Irvine. I was high on them late last year. They got hot, finished the year 21. They were a team last year. I actually picked them to win the regional. They didn't. But I think the Anteaters, again, a very solid team, a team that consistently is in the regional conversation. They'll be another one of those teams, too, that they could potentially host this year. You need some West Coast teams, and I think they're going to be one of the better West Coast teams. One of the things that I love to do after we go cover a game at Duty Noble is I come home and I eat my Taco Bell and I watch West Coast baseball. If you ever catch the Eaters online or watching them on ESPN, stop and just leave the game on because they play baseball the right way out there. I would say UC Irvine, they're not the flashy, prospecty type team. They kind of get some of these renegade types that have a little something to prove. It's part of their culture. Number 19, Tennessee. Tennessee loses a ton of pitching. They finished the year number 6 last year. You remember they made it to Omaha, one of the first teams eliminated. We didn't get them in Omaha. We got them in Hoover, and they smashed us. And I still contend to you, we did not bring our best effort in Hoover. Tennessee preseason number 19, that's probably about right. And some of that, too, I think, is out of respect for Tony Vitello. Very hard-nosed coach, kind of a rah-rah guy, alpha dog type guy that really gets the most out of his guys. And so Tennessee, really kind of fortunate to have him. That was the big talk of Omaha last year was Tony going to stay? And everybody's like, where's he going to go? When the job at LSU got filled by Jay Johnson, you begin to think, okay, well, if Sully is staying at Florida and Jay is going to Baton Rouge, where's Vitello going to go? And then they sign him to a nice extension. It'll be interesting to see what happens this year. I don't think Tennessee is as good as they were a year ago, but I think Tennessee baseball is back in many respects. Not that they've ever been, a baseball power within this league, but they have fielded some really good teams, produced some great players. And I think as long as Tony is there, Tennessee is going to contend for the top 25. Number 18, Oregon State. I like this Oregon State program, even though Coach Casey's not there anymore. I think Oregon State, they are basically the best pitching staff in the West just about every single year. That won't be any in question this year. They will have great pitching. There's no question about it. They're going to have great pitching. It's kind of what they built the program around. They don't get big crowds out there. They produce big-time players, though. And Oregon State was a team last year that was kind of a trendy pick. Some people thought, maybe they'll make a run here late, and didn't really work out. But they're going to return a lot of pieces and be a team that really, I think, really competes, out west, for the Pac-12 championship. I don't think they win it, but I do think they will make it awfully interesting. TCU at 17, Kirk Saarloos is the coach there now. He's kind of been the coach in waiting for a while. I'm eager to see what he does there. Slosh has moved on. And there was some talk, too, that Saarloos wasn't going to get the job. And then he does ultimately get the job, which was the right thing, considering that he had stayed there and been loyal to those guys. They've always got pitching. They don't always have hitting and defense, but they always are a competitive team. But now you've got a culture shift. So now that Kirk has the reins, what do they do differently to kind of get over the hump? I think programs like TCU are what Duke and Georgia Tech want to be. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're always in the top half of their league, and they always seem to kind of come together late. Of course, they were the first top 8 national seed eliminated last year. But I think some of that may have had to do with all that was going on behind the scenes, with Slosh Nagel and being rumored for all these jobs. It's difficult to focus on the job at hand when you're expecting to get the next job. Number 16, Georgia. We've talked about them before. Mississippi State will actually play in Athens this year. I'm looking forward to that. I will punch my SEC bingo card in its entirety this year. There are only 2 SEC stadiums that I have not attended a game or covered a game at, and that's Missouri and Georgia. I will get a chance to do them both this year. Looking forward to go back. Now, Scott Strickland always has pitching. Always. Always, always, always. And it's not just recruiting. They do a good job developing pitchers at the University of Georgia, and that is kind of Scott Strickland's pedigree. They went 31-25 last year, but here's the deal. They couldn't score. That was the thing. They couldn't score. A little bit older this year, got a chance to be a better team. I think 16 is about right. They went in. Remember, they blasted Vanderbilt last year too, which really kind of people are like, oh, well, Vanderbilt's not the evil empire. There's some chinks in the armor here, And I think Georgia is a team that's capable of hosting this year. They had everything was in the palm of their hands last year. They just faded down the stretch. And that's the thing, too. When you ride those horses early, when you start throwing guys, March and April deeper into ball games, sometimes they fade in June. And so it'll be interesting to see how Strickland manages that. But if they can get a few runs, they're going to beat some teams. Number 15, Arizona. I think that's a bit high, considering everything they lost. It's almost like we're giving them that out of reputation. You had a handful of players transfer out that joined Jay Johnson there at LSU. New coaching staff there. I think they're a tad overrated. But again, into Pac-12, they have recruited well. They've got good culture there. Finished number 7 in the country last year. 15 maybe seems about right. I think they'll take a bigger step back than that. Texas Tech in at 14. I think that's about right. I'm a Texas Tech fan. I really like Timmy Tadlock. I would have been thrilled if he had been our baseball coach, and that's not in no way a criticism of Chris Lemonis. But when Mississippi State was working through, that coaching search, I was thinking, let's go get Tim Tadlock. That guy knows how to coach offense. That guy understands this new launch angle thing. And as a matter of fact, I would say Tadlock was probably a little bit ahead of the curve, when it came to analytics. He was the guy that went out and got guys who could put the ball over the fence. And then you had other guys that kind of had warning track power to get them in the weight room. They teach them a little bit about hitting mechanics. Next thing you know, everybody in the order is difficult to deal with. They ended up being a top 8 national seed last year, and they ended up losing to Stanford. A lot of people thought, well, Stanford deserved it more than Texas Tech. Well, it all worked out in the end. I like this Tech team. I'm looking forward to seeing the Bulldogs play them down in Biloxi. That's going to be an interesting week. I got to drive down there, cover New Orleans, and then we get a day off. We head over to Biloxi. And then we get Texas Tech on back-to-back nights down there. Looking forward to a huge crowd down there as your national champion Bulldogs, bringing a show on the road down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I know you guys will turn out and do a great job. Notre Dame at 13. Ended the year number 10 last year. They had a lot of media hype. They were a really good team. And my knock on them last year, of course, was in basically canceling the non-conference schedule. I don't know if we had a real measure of who they were. But after playing those guys head-to-head, and watching how well they pitched it and the way that they played defense most of the time, I'll admit I might have undervalued those guys a little bit. But, of course, Mississippi State wins that super regional. And I remember that feeling, going into Game 3, it's like you just have it in the pit of your stomach. It's like, are we really going to let these guys come in here and beat us? There were so many people in national media that felt like Notre Dame should have been in the top 8. Some people said, it wasn't fair. Notre Dame gets Mississippi State. I have respect for Link Jarrett and those guys at Notre Dame. Notre Dame does not have a proud baseball tradition like we do. You can say, Steve, you remember them coming to Duty Noble, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, they just don't have a lot of tradition. And I think Notre Dame is fortunate to have Link Jarrett. Can they keep him? That's going to be the real question. Can they keep him? Guys basically built some prominence there in college baseball, really where there wasn't any. They finished the year number 10 last year. I think that's probably accurate. And then their preseason 13. What's the ACC going to look like this year? If you look at the numbers here, kind of running through the, how they're ranked here. They're ranked as the 3rd highest ACC team this year. And again, I go back to last year. When you don't have to throw your pitchers in the midweek, you have everybody available for the weekend. You've got a competitive advantage nobody else does. They also lost a couple of big hitters, as you guys know. But, I think this is probably about right. They'll be a host team again, I think, for certain. East Carolina finished the year 12, preseason number 12. Arguably, I think you could make the case. East Carolina might be the best mid-major program in the South. I don't know that there's really a lot of question about that. East Carolina, he's done a really good job there, and a lot of people have been expecting, them to have to replace a coach there. I remember last year watching the video. Pretty incredible to watch, Cliff talk about things. Cliff Godwin's a guy, that kind of rose to prominence when he was an assistant coach at Ole Miss, gets the ECU job, and there was a lot of discussion, if Ole Miss made a change, would they bring him back? I would say probably so. But, the guy got really emotional, and he cried. They got eliminated last year, and he goes, you know what, we're going to keep fighting, we're going to keep climbing, and eventually we're going to get there. And you kind of hope they do. Not at our expense, obviously, but, when you see a program like that has been so consistent in recent years, you'd like to see them get a little reward. Of course, they have been to Mississippi State recently for a midweek non-conference game. We won the game. But those guys came to play. Number 11, Florida State. I don't like the ranking. They went from unranked to 11th, and I get it. Last year they were 31 and 24. Showed some flashes down the stretch. I think 11 is too high. I think I would have Notre Dame ahead of them. But we'll see. Florida State, again, people forget this. It's like, Florida State was kind of the, they were the standard bearer in the 90s. It's like the kind of the de facto number one every single year. And I think that's the things that kind of carry over with people. It's like, oh, well, they're Florida State. They got to be great. But here's the deal is, what is it, 23 now? 23 appearances in the College World Series without a title. And that's one of the lists we wanted to get off of, right? We were right there with them. We were going to be tied with Clemson. But Florida State was kind of the default number one every single year and never could get over the hump. And I was there when Mike Martin's final press conference at Omaha, and I felt so privileged to be there and be able to ask him a question. And it's one of the heroes in our game, man. This is one of those guys, too, that kind of made college baseball. You look at what Polk has done, and Mike Martin did that really in the ACC in many respects. But I think 11's too high. NC State there at number 10 ended the year number 4. A lot of people say, hey, they should have won a national championship. Let me just tell you this. Everybody's got an opinion. I'll offer you mine. They weren't going to beat Mississippi State. It was just simply our time. It was simply our time. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, I think Vanderbilt would have eliminated NC State. People kind of like, oh, NC State. No, I really think Vanderbilt would have gotten NC State, which would have just simply made Mississippi State's path to the title that much easier. But I respect NC State. And Elliott and those guys there at NC State, how they handled all that with such grace. It was very unfortunate to see it end that way, but it in no way diminishes our national championship. They will return a great team this year. I do believe they are a top 10 team, even though they lost a few pieces, but NC State is one of those teams you really don't want to pair up with in a super regional. Florida, number 9, they were unranked last year. They got hot late, made the tournament, and then kind of made the tournament selection committee look a little silly when they got eliminated the way they did. And I blame O'Sullivan for all that. When you get the opportunity to have a new lease on life, you got to take full advantage of it. They didn't. I don't think they're a team that many people probably have a fair assessment of this year. I do think they're going to be a lot better this year. It's all going to boil down to pitching, and that's O'Sullivan's trademark too. That's his pedigree, is signing and developing pitchers. That's what Florida baseball has been built around. They return a lot of pieces offensively. If they can just be above average pitching, they're going to be a team that I think really contends for a top 8 national seed. You say, well, Steve, they were unranked last year. That's right, but they're going to return so much of last year's offense. If they can just find a couple arms on the weekend, they're going to be a tough out. Number 8, LSU. I still think this is too high. I would probably have Florida ahead of LSU right now. I think LSU is right there around top 10, but this is close enough. And again, a lot of people are saying, hey, look at what the pieces they're returning. And the thing you look at, too, is how many games they're going to play in their home baseball. That softball stadium they call Alex Box Stadium. I've been in some church league softball games that the balls didn't carry as well as they do there at Alex Box out to left. It's crazy. But be that as it may, LSU, there's just a lot of moving parts to this thing. I think they may be a year away, but you look at what they lost pitching-wise last year. Now, bringing some guys in, you got to figure some things out. But that's a lineup that is going to be difficult. This year when you played those guys, it's like once you kind of cleared the 6 hole, you kind of felt like that you were okay. I don't know if it's going to be the case this year with so many guys transferring in. Oklahoma State, number 7, unranked last year. They were a team last year that I kind of picked to be a surprise team in the tournament. Didn't work out quite the way we wanted. I do think Oklahoma State is a team that will contend for a top 8 national seed. I think when you look at the Big 12 and you look at what's kind of around them, they're a team that I believe will finish in the top 3 in that league. based on the way that the D1 baseball has them ranked, they agree they got them number 2 behind Texas. I like this Oklahoma State team. They're a blue-collar bunch. They're easy to root for. It's just going to be the pitching aspect of it, much like it is from everybody else. If they can find a couple of reliable guys on the weekend, they're going to be tough. You remember they scored a bunch of runs early last year, and then a lot of that left them late. Number 6, Stanford, finished the year number 8. I was there. They had Vanderbilt beat, and you had a walk-off wild pitch. Craziness, man. I was sitting there thinking, you know what, I'm supposed to sit here and watch Vanderbilt get eliminated. It's going to be great. And to give Vanderbilt credit, they take full advantage and go away and play for a national championship. Stanford, great team, great culture, do a great job recruiting. We had a great time when those guys came here for the Super Regional back in 19. This is a team that is expected to win the Pac-12. This is the team expected to be a top 8 national. I don't have any reason to disagree with that. Again, watch those guys play. They play a good brand of baseball. Now, of course, they're kind of part of that NBA group too. They're kind of like they do some of the Vanderbilt stuff. Ole Miss, number 5, I think it's a bit high. I do believe Ole Miss is a top 10 team. I would probably have Stanford ahead of them, and I would probably have LSU and Florida ahead of them. I'd probably have Ole Miss more like 8 or 9. But definitely top 10. Ole Miss is going to be able to swing it. The issue with Ole Miss is going to be is pitching. You're like, oh, well, they bring all those guys back in the bullpen, but they weren't any good. And then you lose 2 frontline studs on the weekend. And so, we got to it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. That's the thing that I think about all these transfers that come in from other leagues to the SEC. You got the best coaches in college baseball breaking down your mechanics and breaking down all the things you do. And so they're going to find the holes in your game. They're going to exploit them. Baseball is a game of adjustments. And that's not just in-game adjustments. That's in-season adjustments. From weekend to weekend to weekend to weekend, all of a sudden they pick up your tendencies. The next thing you know, you're throwing bad practice. And I think that's kind of where Ole Miss is. Now, offensively, Ole Miss is going to be outstanding. They will be one of the best lineups in the country. Tim Elko is back, and you can say what you want to, about his decision to come back. But I think he was a guy that would have been drafted pretty early. He's betting on himself coming back. And I think he is the centerpiece of that. Will easily be a preseason All-SEC pick. But, yeah, this Ole Miss team, if you can't pitch it, Ole Miss is going to beat you up pretty good. They have some guys that can really swing it. And I think that lineup is when you get a guy that's on and you can start sitting some guys down, get them guessing a little bit, you can win. But Ole Miss, I don't think they contend for a top 8 national. I think they're certainly a super regional type team. And then it kind of depends on matchups after there. But, a lot of people say, Steve, there's this. No, this is a good Ole Miss team. Last year was a good Ole Miss team. And I actually think, I think last year's team on paper was better, which is why I think this Ole Miss team this year may be a tad high in the rankings because you don't have Doug McCasey. You don't have, a couple first-rounders on the weekend. What are you going to do? And it's like you think, well, we didn't have a bullpen last year, so we had to work those guys early in the year. And so they end up both missing some time. Gunnar Hogland, too, who's an absolute stud. You ride those horses too hard in March and April. They're not around for you in May and June. And that's kind of what happened to Ole Miss. And they say, well, you've got Dustin Diamond or Derek Diamond, all due respect. He had the back issue last year. Is that a chronic problem? Can he be a Friday night guy? Is he just a Sunday guy? I don't know. But you got to figure it out. And Bianco and those guys always kind of find a way to piece it together. But when you don't have guys that can get you 7-8 innings, well, then who picks up the slack? Well, it's the bullpen. And the bullpen last year was proven to be completely ineffective and one of the worst bullpens in the conference down the stretch. Your Bulldogs, number 4. I think it's about right. I think that's probably about right. I would actually have us number 3. They have Vanderbilt number 3. And I think when you look at Vanderbilt, I don't understand the love that Vanderbilt is getting. I know it's like people are kind of banking on, well, Tim Corbin has run a great program. That is absolutely true. But you don't lose 2 first-rounders off your weekend rotation and get better. And then, we talk so much about, some of the guys they trotted out there last year against us, and we rocked those guys. Now, everybody improves a little bit year to year, at least you hope. But Vanderbilt lost a lot of pieces last year. Now, they're recruiting at a level unlike anybody else because of the advantages that they have. Is Vanderbilt a top 10 team? Here's your hot take. I'm going to say no. And I don't think there are a lot of people that would agree with me right now. And let me tell you why that is. I think a lot of people are caught up in the cult of Vanderbilt. They say, oh, well, even when Vanderbilt just reloads. And in some respects, they do. But when you look at all the guys they lost last year and the fact that Florida is expected to be better, Tennessee is consistent, Georgia expected to be better, and now all of a sudden, the bottom half of the East isn't quite what it once was. Now you look at Missouri and say, hey, Missouri's still Missouri. Missouri came in here and take 2 out of 3 from us last year. Kentucky, I think, will be better. Are they a top 25 team? No. I think Vanderbilt's ride of kind of coasting in the East and having the benefit of playing Kentucky and Missouri and Tennessee every year when they have not been great teams, I think that's over for us for a while. That's the thing. You look at it's so difficult for a team in the SEC West to win the overall SEC championship because you're going to have to play a potential NCAA tournament team every single weekend in your division. Anybody, a divisional foe, every one of those teams that you play is going to be a team that's in contention to make the field. It's just not like that in the East. And I think this year the East will be more competitive, and I think it hurts Vanderbilt. I think Florida will prove to be the best team in the SEC East, and I think Georgia is going to spoil somebody's season. That's my hot take. Vanderbilt, not a top 10 team. Are they a host team? Absolutely. Can they make it to Omaha? Yes, they can. At this point, I'm not expecting it, though. And I said last year on this show that Vanderbilt was a team last year that I felt even though they had the big guys on the weekend, they were somewhat vulnerable because of their inability to score. Well, does your ability to score get any better when you consider all the pieces they lost last year? And then there's issues at catcher. What are they going to do at catcher? That's a joke, too. I think Vanderbilt is a team that is overvalued. They are a good team, a really good team. I don't think they're an elite team this year. Number 2, Arkansas. I can't really argue against this. I like Dave Van Horn as a coach. I mean, I'm sure if I went to dinner with him, I may not like him quite as much. But Arkansas is going to be competitive as long as Van Horn is there. Simple as that. They're recruiting at a great level. They have committed themselves to improving the facilities at Baum Stadium. And no matter what people say on Twitter, it is not the best stadium in the SEC. It is among the best atmospheres, but much of the grandstand and kind of the infrastructure there is pretty antiquated. Like, oh, you got to come to a game there. Guys, I've been to games there, and I do enjoy going to games there, except when State loses. But from a facility standpoint, the grandstand at Baum Stadium is probably not even in the top 4 or 5 in the SEC. And that's just kind of being honest. And a lot of people that put these things out there, they've never been anywhere. It's kind of like when Ole Miss built an IPF, and they're like, oh, it's the best in the country. Well, how many have you seen? Well, ours. Kind of like at Arkansas. It's like, oh, we get the best stadium in the country. Well, how many places have you been? Well, I've been here in Jonesboro. Yeah, well, come on. And that's not in any way to diminish the Arkansas program. I got a lot of respect for the Razorbacks. They were the best team in the country last year in the regular season. They couldn't finish the deal. And it's like, oh, we were number 1. Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you don't win the tournament, it doesn't matter what happens in the preseason. And I go back to something John Cohen told me when he was a player at Mississippi State. He was a junior in 1989 at Pete Taylor Park. Getting my Mississippi State baseball cards autographed. I have them to my left. I can touch them right now if I wanted to. We had been number 1 most of the year. We lost and we dropped a little bit. And I said, I'm disappointed we're not number 1 anymore. He goes, you know what? The only poll that counts is the last one, and that's the one that we plan to be number 1 in. So Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Texas, everybody else, Ole Miss, everybody that had a little taste of number 1 at times the last couple of years. That's all cute. It looks good on Twitter, but it only matters. The only team that's truly number 1, 2021, is the last one that Mississippi State was at the top of. Could Mississippi State be perennial number 1? Could they be a consensus preseason number 1 this year? Yeah, I don't know. I think you could make an argument for that. I would vote Texas number 1. I know many of you think, oh, Steve, you should be a homer for us. Guys, I'm just going to call it straight. I like this Texas team. I really, really do. I think this is a team, and David Pierce, I thought last year that David and obviously A&M, I think Texas and Texas A&M, both of those guys I thought were really kind of coaching for their jobs. And then what happens is you get a change at A&M, Slosh goes in, and then Texas puts it together. Texas got off to a dreadful start last year. People forget. Texas had some trouble early on. They get the pitching settled. They get the defense settled, and next thing you know, they're on their way to Omaha. And I wanted to play Texas because I felt like we were better than Texas, not just because we beat them, but just from a matchup standpoint. I said, you know what? There's too much swing and miss in this lineup, and we can throw the baseball by them. We did. There was no doubt that Mississippi State was better than Texas. Matter of fact, I watched the tender-legged walk-off this morning because I was feeling good about life. But I think this Texas team is capable of winning a national championship. Did they lose some pieces? Yes. But they bring a lot back. And I think this is a team that is capable of winning a national championship. I don't think there's any question they are the Big 12 favorite. To be honest with you, I don't know that anybody's even really close to Texas in the Big 12. I think Oklahoma State, obviously, can make a decent run at it. I think you could say the same for Texas Tech. But outside of that league, I think, is going to be similar to what it was last year. TCU, it's going to be like 3 decent teams at the top, and then everybody else is very mediocre. So I don't think there's anybody to slow Texas down from putting up a huge record this year. And I think, again, it's going to boil down to matchups. And last year, Mississippi State was the worst matchup in the country for Texas. And the truth of the matter is we had the rain-delayed game, and then we missed some golden opportunities, and they beat us in the extra inning game. But I thought that was a turning point at Omaha for us because I think I give so much credit to our fans that stayed after and cheered our team out of the dugout after that rain delay. It stayed to like 1 in the morning. Love you guys, man. You guys are true Maroon. But this Texas team, I think they were probably a year ahead of schedule. I don't think many people expected them to make Omaha in the early parts of the 2021 season, but yet there they were. Kind of surprised some people, but they've got some dudes. And Mike Antico has kind of moved on. If I'm not mistaken, I think Antico was gone. He was a grad transfer last year that played center field for them and hit leadoff. But they got some prospecting type dudes on that team, and Texas recruits at a very high level, and they're going to go out and recruit those Major League Baseball prospects and not just great baseball players. And I think it's going to pay off for them this year. Do they win the whole thing? Don't know if I call that. Can we win the whole thing? We can. I'm not ready to call it. We're still figuring some things out. It's a long season. But I do, again, I respect the D1 baseball poll. I hope you guys do as well. But, yeah, I think outside of a few things, there are a couple minor tweaks. To be honest with you, I think the biggest one is Vanderbilt. I don't think Vanderbilt's a top 10 team. And I do think that Arizona is probably a little bit high, even at 15. So, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with TCU. But outside of that, I agree for the most part with this poll. I think most people will as well. Okay, Dogpile the book, man. We're about a week away from those books being delivered to the publisher. It's supposed to ship from the printer on the 26th. It'll take about 2 days to get here, and then I will go run down to Jackson, and I'm going to sign thousands and thousands of books, and then they're going to mail them to you. So, your books will be in the mail in just over a week's time. It's been a long process for all of us. I'm kind of glad it worked out the way that it did. I wanted everybody to get it for Christmas, but the bottom line is everybody will have a chance to read it and be excited before college baseball season. I'll be honest with you guys. Sometimes I get all wound up, man. I get to thinking about how important it was, to be there and to write this book, and I'm just really, really excited about you guys having it. And I always knew this moment would come. I never thought I'd be the guy writing the book, and it's just been my honor and privilege to write it. And so many thousands of you have already pre-ordered the book, and it's very, very humbling to say the least. So if you hadn't ordered yet, you can at dogpilethebook.com. You won't have to wait as long as everybody else because you're waited to order. And I want to tell you guys this too. Nobody has accused me of this, but I think it's important you understand this. I told the publisher and my agent that I did not want to be paid any royalties until the books were delivered because I just didn't feel right about that. It's like people have bought this book, and so their money is tied up. They've already spent their money. They don't have a book yet. I didn't feel right. And so they're like, hey, we've got your first royalty check. They're calculating this. I was like, guys, just hold it. I don't want to take any money from anybody until these books are delivered. And so I just say that because we're kind of in this thing together. I didn't want anybody to think, oh, well, Steve's out. Steve's got my money and he's taking some cruise, and then I don't have my book. So I have not made a dime to this point. Now, I will be paid at some point, but I haven't made a dime at this point. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys just because I'm a person of integrity. I do have some ethics, and I just felt like it's important for you guys to know that. So that's going to do it for today. And again, if you're looking for other books, you can find them at dogpilethebook.com. You can get Alpha Dog, Stark Villains, or Flim Flam, signed, personalized, however you like. If you're looking for Blooms of Oleander, you can find that at Amazon, BooksAMillion.com, Barnes & Noble. And I continue to get requests about the Stark Villain shirts. I wore a long sleeve the other day, and somebody's like, hey, where can I get that? StarkVillains.com. And I know many of you are thinking, hey, I know so-and-so's a big fan of Boneyard or a big fan of Steve. Maybe give them that gift. That's a pretty cool thing there. Give them the gift. Get them the Stark Villain shirt. Maybe get them a Stark Villains hoodie to wear to Duty Noble this year. How about that? That'd be pretty smart. Anyway, that's it for today. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
What's the big deal?
Where can you get pizza, bread twists, specialty chicken, and more for just $5.99 each?
Is it at Domino's?
He hands off hand-tossed pizza and a marble cookie brownie. He's going! There's a lot of variety on the radio and at Domino's, too, where you can
Mix and match 2 or more. $5.99 each at Domino's.
2-item minimum. Pan pizza, bone-in wings, and bread bowls will be extra. Ask for this limited time offer. Prices, participation, delivery area, and charges may vary.